It's great to have you back, Admiral, and welcome. What do you make of these sort of statements at odds with each other about what's really going on here?
As usual, Vladimir Putin is kind of pulling the strings and staying ahead tactically by sowing more confusion here in the West. I'll add to what the Secretary General said, Kelly, which is that there was a pretty significant cyber attack yesterday, DDoS attack against wide variety of Ukrainian command and control and their overall systems of control. So clearly what we're seeing is Putin saying one thing, doing another. And I'll conclude on this point by simply saying the first thing that is going to be the leading edge of an attack is going to be cyber. So think of what happened yesterday as a bit of a warm up there. I continue to think it's a 3 in 4 chance that Putin will end up going forward with an invasion.
Wow. And I was going to ask maybe if cyber would be the attack, if there's some kind of, bait and switch idea here. But it would be hard to explain what the purpose would otherwise be of mobilizing that many troops for this long a period of time.
Yeah, I think the way to think about it, Kelly, is there's a couple of possibilities. One is a full-on blitzkrieg attack where he goes to Kiev and takes out the Zelensky government. I think that's unlikely. That buys him a very difficult set of options going forward, to include facing a Ukrainian insurgency, which I think would be very difficult. On the other hand, to your point, it is very possible he will launch a cyber attack. He will put in unmarked troops. He'll kind of use the playbook he used in 2014 to carve another chunk out of southeastern Ukraine, and then park and attempt to negotiate going forward. That seems to me a probable scenario than the full-on blitzkrieg at this point. And let's face it, there's still an opportunity that we can stand down from this, that there can be further dialogue, but it's going to require Putin to make that decision. And
this morning, Jens Stoltenberg also said that he believes Russian coercion is the quote-unquote new normal. What does that mean?
We see Russia doing this kind of around its circuit. So 2008, they invade a very small neighbor, Georgia. They still hold a couple provinces of that. They invade Ukraine in 2014. They annex Crimea. Effectively, they control provinces in southeast Ukraine. They own effectively a chunk of territory of another small European country, Moldova. These are sometimes called frozen conflicts, but it really is Putin exerting control in the region around Russia.
And what should NATO do about that? Should they themselves look to the NATO borders and say, this is our line of influence and we're not looking to extend that beyond? Or in what way should they then, demarcate where they believe NATO presence and the threat, quote unquote, of their activities is appropriate?
I'll tell you 3 things NATO should be doing, and I think they are doing. One is to shore up NATO country defenses, the 30 nations in NATO. This is why President Biden correctly deployed several thousand troops from the 18th Airborne Corps to Europe to bolster NATO troops there alongside our European allies. So shore up NATO borders. Number 2, for nations like Ukraine, not a NATO member, but a close partner, a democracy, somebody who has worked closely with us, we had to provide them the lethal aid, the intelligence, the cyber overwatch, the capability to resist, to make themselves, if you will, into a porcupine. Bears don't eat porcupines because they're kind of difficult to digest. And number 3, NATO should be, at the same time as those 2 things, talking to Russia, trying to come up with a compromise of some kind where we look at conventional forces in Europe. We look at intermediate cruise missiles. We look at Open Skies Treaty. There are plenty of diplomatic avenues still open. So some hard power inside NATO, work with the Ukrainians, and some soft power approaches to Russia. We can do all 3 of those. Yeah.